Hey guys, welcome to another episode of As the Leader Grows, where we are passionate about helping business leaders build confidence, gain clarity, and create community. And dude, I have got a treat for you. My good friend, Ben Newman, one of the top performance coaches in the world, spent 5 years with the one and only Nick Saban, University of Alabama. How many rings did you guys get, man?
Two. That's like lights. You guys are going to think I wasn't doing my job.
2 wins. Listen, Ben and I got together. I literally, for the last year, all my friends are like, I kept hearing Ben Newman's name, And we just finished a podcast recording with on his side, on his podcast. But friends are like, you got to get connected. We both are in. Our good friend, Erwin McManus, who I do believe is one of the best communicators in the history of the world. He's a phenomenal communicator. And we actually sat next to each other, connected literally like we had been friends and brothers for 20 or 30 years. And then we looked down and we both had the same All-Star Air Jordans on. So I was like, God, you set this up. So Ben Newman, what's up, my friend?
Ken Joslin, brother, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'll tell you what, there was all the energy, all the friends, everybody telling it. But then when you look down and it was the All Blacks that have, that was it. It was over. So we knew we were supposed to be in that room together.
Yeah, we did, man. Yeah, it was good. I'm super excited. We just finished your podcast. Dude, you've got a ton of stories, a ton of stuff coming up. I want to hit one of the things that we talked about is you mentioned this in your podcast intro. We talked about it a little bit off air. And I mentioned this, how do you continue to stack wins? Because success, and you have a concept that you teach on the seduction of success, because you see a lot of people who win and they can't maintain that momentum. There's always that human element where we let down. Talk about that a little bit, the seduction of success, and how you were able to take that in some of the top organizations around the world. And I live in Alabama. I'm not an Alabama fan at all.
No, you're not.
No, I am not. I am a Michigan fan through and through. So I didn't like Saban when he was at Michigan State. Let's just make that clear really quick. But you helped you helped and partnered with Coach Saban in Alabama, who is the gold standard when it comes to coaching, number one, and to college football programs. Talk about how you took that seduction of success and really implemented that into a program like University of Alabama.
Well, I'll share with you what's actually interesting, and I feel like, and I know you probably feel the same way. Oftentimes there's a lot of luck and the dots connecting at the right time, but then being prepared to walk through that door of opportunity. And so I'd like to actually answer the question by saying I was blessed that my first college football team that I ever worked with was the North Dakota State Bison. And they had just come off of winning a 4th straight national championship. Coach Kleiman brings me in, and I'm thinking, what are you bringing me in for? You just won 4 straight national championships. And that wasn't enough. It was, let's go for 5, because it had never been done in the history of the college football. And if we do it the way college football is set up today, that'll probably never be done again. So he brings me in to provide a different edge. And I talked about attack the process back then. I talked about the standard back then. Things that I had worked with NFL athletes on. And my work actually all started in the corporate world in 2006. I've been doing this coaching work for over 18 years. So I've been doing this a long time and blessed to work with some of the highest performers in business and in sports. And so I walk in with the football team, deliver that first talk, hit it off. That 5th national championship happens. And I felt like I got lucky. And then he keeps me around another year and keeps me around another year. Now I'm in my 9th year with Coach Kleiman, and now we're at Kansas State. He brought me with him. This will be our 5th year at Kansas State, won a Big 12 championship last year. I share all this detail to say the things that I learned at North Dakota State when I went to Alabama, it was the same things that Saban was doing in Alabama. And then I said, I really am lucky, because these 2 men, Kleiman and Saban, are the 2 most winningest college football coaches over the last 15 years. And they both had standards that they lived to. And I realized, and it was the first talk that I ever gave, I talked about standard over feelings with Saban. And you could see it in his eyes when I shared, this is what I want to talk to the guys about. It wasn't that was new to Saban, but he was like, you're going to be a guy that can help our team because you believe what I believe. And it's that standard that causes you to show up and do the work after you win. And I would say Coach Kleiman and Coach Saban have done that, maybe better than any coaches that ever walked the face of the earth, If you win a championship, what are you ready to do today? You dominate a team on a Saturday, what are you willing to do to break down film and find your edge on Sunday, to come to work on Monday, ready to continue to stack days and do what it takes to win? And a lot of individuals, they get seduced by success because it's easier to celebrate a win for a couple of weeks and have a rough Saturday. It's only one loss. But those real champions continue to show up and dominate a standard regardless of their results.
I love that. Where did that come from in you, Ben? What was the moment in your life where you realized that? Because what you said was, for Coach Saban, you can help us. Basically, we have the same DNA. We're in alignment with what this looks like. When you talk about it's my feelings aren't here. My standard is the number one thing. This is who I am. This is how I operate. This is how I show up early. This is how I'm the last one to leave the gym or to leave the practice field or to leave the film room. When in your life, Ben, did that start to come to fruition?
I was a young boy, and I'm going to give you guys the real story. This is probably not what you would expect after the bios and things you say about me and what people may read. But the reality is I had to go through a lot of pain. I had to grow up fast. A lot of my mentors call me what many refer to as an old soul. Parents divorced at 6 months old. Mother was diagnosed with a rare muscle disease in 1983 called amyloidosis. For those of you that don't know what that is, every single one of us in our muscles, we have amyloids. If you have an excess of amyloids, eats away at your muscles and you pass away. My mother was coming to the dinner table every single night, single mom, fighting to make ends meet, 24-hour nursing care in the back of our home. My mother was a teacher. She was a leader. She was a lover of people, her students, my brother and I. She'd come to that dinner table every single night without fail. And she'd look me dead square in the eyes, look at my brother and say, Drew, how was your day at school? But then she'd look me dead square in my eyes, Ken, and she would say, honey, how was your day at school? And I always got the honey because I was the younger son. I got to get you guys to try to smile a little bit because this gets a little rough on the ears. But the reality was, Ken, my mother was dying before my eyes. Yet she realized with an IV stand and sometimes one nurse or two nurses, because we had 24-hour nursing care in our home her last year living, she'd come to the dinner table to ask me how my day was at school. Wow. So what that provided for me, even though she passed the pen that she was writing with in this amazing journal that I now got from my grandma when I was in college, taught me how my mother thought. Now, I witnessed it from watching her come to that dining room table. But when you're a 7-year-old boy, it doesn't hit you as hard as seeing that, remembering that, and then seeing her words. Is that my mother taught me the greatest life lesson. It's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live your life. And she passed 11 days before my 8th birthday. But one of the greatest gifts she gave me was perspective. And so for me, Ken, I realized I'm a 44-year-old man. My mother passed away at 38. I've been given 6 extra years, one day at a time, that my mother never got. And you better believe I'm going to live every single one. I'm going to stack those days on top of each other. I will not allow my feelings to dictate how I show up. I will show up to the standard, because if my mom could do that dying before my eyes, I could do it with a lot of health, blessing of 2 healthy kids and a great wife, and wow, a blessing of being able to work with high performers every day.
When you got that, you said your grandmother gave you her journal. Give me a couple of the things out of that journal that spoke to you.
First off,
changers for you.
First off, let me share, and I know with your past as a pastor, the number of stories where you're having to remind people that your greatest strength comes from what lies within. And oftentimes the pain builds that strength, and giving people the reminder, like, it's okay to dig in and to go there. And so my grandma gave me this journal when I was a junior in college. Brother, I tucked it away in a box, 2 rolls of duct tape, man. That would move with me to Chicago. I read those first pages of the journal. I wasn't strong enough at the time. Then when my wife was pregnant with our first child, Isaac, I finally ripped that box open. She's like, what is in that box? Hadn't opened it up in years. And I was reconnected back to the words on the page. Now, I had already been speaking, already been coaching. You talk about God going to work in your life, Ken. So already doing those things. And the words that stick out to me the most were beat the statistics, beat the odds, live with a disease that is chronic and fatal, believe in yourself, combat anything, purpose in life. So I cracked that open in 2008. The first time I was paid to speak, Ken, was 2006. So here I was already doing the work, living the words that my mother had lived and shared as her example. And then I find him in the journal. It almost catapulted me to this different level of saying, I got to take what's in me every single day.
Man, I can't help but think, if your mom saw where you were at today because of what she instilled in you and what you were able to see in you, how proud she would be of what you've become and the impact, not only that you're making, but the impact she made in you and how that is just literally multiplied.
Well, I'm an emotional guy who cries when he watches Extreme Home Makeover. So I'm gonna try to cut a joke so that I don't start crying here on your podcast. I don't know if I've ever shared this. So when I was in high school, I was the high school basketball player who had heart, kid. I had a couple Division III recruiting trips, and the coaches said, "Young man, you could come here and ride the bench." I was like, "Hey, I'll go to Michigan State and watch them win a championship. Maybe my career is over." But I was the kid who had a lot of heart. I could shoot it, but I was slow. I couldn't play any defense. But I remember when I put together just highlights of some of the teams that I was able to be a part of and guys who played D1 and we won games. I had great coaches who I now write about their characters in books that I write. And I remember I dedicated this book that I put together to my mom. And there were these words that I wrote that when I think back to what I wrote about living for my mom and the example was for her, like as I shared as an old soul, one of those moments, like I was just a high school kid. Yeah. Yet there was always this desire to want to be the best for my mom. And so I would hope that she would look down and say, "Son, you are taking it every day and you are living to that standard and you are fighting to be the best. But as a great teacher, a great leader always does, don't save it for yourself, share it with others." And I just hope I'm making her proud that I'm sharing the gift she gave me in those lessons with others. And I do my best. Ken, I screw it up all the time. I try to be the best dad. I'll mess that up. I try to be the best husband. I mess that up. I try to be the best coach. I mess it up. But you're always going to get my best. And I hope my mom knows that I'm trying to give my best to the world.
Yeah, I'm sure she does, my friend. You talk about standard, the seduction of success. It's really about your standard, not your feelings. You've got a book coming out in a couple of weeks. Let's talk about the standard. Let's talk about, you've got a huge event, a huge online event coming up. Let's talk about the book. Let's talk about the online event. Dude, the one thing I love about you, dude, is the impact. Like you wake up every day and it is impact, impact, impact. Who can I help? Who can I make a difference in their life? The one talk I give everywhere around the country is great leaders want something for people, not from people. And that's probably why we connect, because you really do want something for people. And it leans into my favorite Zig Ziglar quote. If I help enough people get what they want, eventually I'm going to get what I want. But it really is sowing into other people's lives. Let's talk about the book, and then let's talk about a little bit about your live event you've got coming up.
Well, I wanted to write the book, The Standard, because believe it or not, it hadn't been written. And I want everybody listening, think of the last championship that you watched on TV. The coach probably said at the end something about the standard. There's a standard that we live to, or there's a standard in our organization. Or maybe the last business conference that you went to, or the keynote. Somebody will say, they'll make reference to the standard, but nobody had yet to write the book that actually breaks down what the standard is and what it means so that you can connect to your standards. We all know what we need to do on a daily basis to win, but it's choosing the mindset every day to live to that standard, understand what the standard is. So I decided to write the book. You know, you do this for 18 years, you get a good amount of research with the Microsofts of the world and some of the highest performing financial advisors in the world and these sports teams. I said, I'm gonna write the book. And the opening chapter goes through 24 things that the standard is so that people can really, oh, now I understand. So that then we can open up this conversation that we get to have together to say, how are you going to develop your standards? And I think that's so important. We're living in this world today where people are confused, people are scared, people don't know what to believe. You know, social media, you don't know what's what anymore.
Right.
And I want to help move people to stop saying how bad you want it and be one of those individuals who develop standards. And just like my little eyes watched my mom, those standards provide an example for the little eyes that are watching you so that you change your life. And it's one of the things I admire about you. And I know you're interviewing me, but I'm going to say this because it really is such a meaningful example. And we talked about it on The Burn, which is our podcast, is when we were sitting there in Irwin's living room and you look and show me this picture of a man I still don't believe was you. And it was you as an umpire.
Listen, Photoshop's not that good, man. You can't even Photoshop it that good.
Darn near 100 pounds ago, 80 pounds that you've lost. And I'm thinking, like, my goodness, like, this is why we connect. Because Ken said, you know what, I'm going to stop telling myself a story and I'm going to start living to my standards. Yeah. And that's why you look the way that you do right now. And that's why you continue to go to F45 and provide an example, because you realize I'm not going to show up to my Create conferences now not being an example. Yeah. I'm not going to lose 80 pounds and say that I'm done. It's this never finished mentality you've developed, which I believe in, that I think the book is going to provide for each of its readers.
I love that. That's so funny. It's a quick story on the standard. One of my best friends, Mark Causey, is one of the top orthodontists in Atlanta. Went same high school. He's a good bit younger than me. Won 3 state championships, I think 2 or 3 at the high school that we graduated. He went and played at Duke. So he played for Coach K at Duke. And so this last year, or the year before last, when Coach K was retiring, so they brought all the Duke players. I think Mark said there were 92 Duke players there. So they were the tunnel when the players came out. Listen to this. So they come out, they played North Carolina, and they got drilled. And it was the last game in Cameron for Coach K. He said he was so pissed off that they got beat by North Carolina, he didn't talk to anybody. He said he went in the locker room, said something to the players, walked out of the locker room, walked through all those 92 former players, got in his car, and went home. Because he was so pissed off because they got beat by North Carolina. And Mark told me that story. And you want to talk about standard. It's his last game ever. And he's so upset and infuriated because their performance didn't meet the Duke standard.
So here's what's interesting. People hear that and they say, well, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with him.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't, believe or have a relationship with those players. But the reality is there's a standard, and we should be upset when we don't meet our standards. We should be upset when we let ourselves the hook. And there was probably something, if we were to have Coach K join us in this conversation, something he realizes he didn't do. Maybe he allowed his guys to be too comfortable. Maybe he allowed his guys to talk about, Coach, we're going to win this one for you, win, 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 rather than focusing on the details that would cause them to win. And maybe he was so upset with himself, he said, man, I'm out of here, right? Because it was on him, because that's what he's always done as a coach, is to take ownership of the things that haven't happened. That's a wild story.
You know what's crazy is Mark said, so he played with Boozer and Jay Williams and all those guys, Mike Dunleavy Jr. So they all were around talking after he left. And that's what they were talking about, was the impact that he had made on their life to do life at such a level and live according to that standard, because they all thought it was hilarious. They were just like, Mark literally said, I remember him telling me a story. They came back from Florida State. They got beat one night, and they came back from Florida State. Charter landed about midnight. They got to the floor to Cameron. All their lockers and everything was piled in the middle of the floor. And Coach K, he said, let us have it till about 2 a.m. in the morning. But it's the standard. So here are all these guys that are very successful, tons of former NBA players, tons of successful entrepreneurs, doctors, attorneys, and they're laughing about and reminiscing about the lessons they've learned from the standard that someone like Coach K, who would be, if Saban had an equivalent, it would be somebody like a Coach K.
I was just going to say, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a story in the book about my work directly with Jalen Hurts when he was at Alabama and with Coach Saban. And it just epitomizes exactly what you said, to where, every time I would show up, they're for one of my visits, and I'd be there 12, 15 times a year throughout a season. They're 5-0, ranked 1 in the country, 8-0, ranked first. Every time you show up, you would think that it was the worst team in college football and they hadn't won a football game. There's moments he would walk off the field. He didn't want to talk to anybody because he was so disappointed in practice that day, because he knew if we don't stack that day, how are we going to be prepared to dominate 60 minutes, 6 seconds of play on Saturday? And I think we lose sight. For those of you like, well, I'm not in football. So no, that's a business lesson. That's a life lesson. if you think you can skip Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and perform on Friday or Thursday, you're missing the opportunity to understand what your highest level of performance looks like. And for some people, they don't want to do that every day. And that's okay. Right. But you have to realize you may never understand what your highest level of performance and impact looks like if you choose to skip days.
Why do you think people skip those days, Ben? Where do you think the disconnect is in people? Because they look at what you're doing, they may look at what we're doing, they look at what Saban's doing, Jalen, they're like, there's no way I can do that.
So
what do you think the disconnect is?
I say this very humbly. If there's something I've figured out in doing this for 18 plus years, it's something that many other coaches and speakers have overlooked. It's not that they don't think it's important, because when they hear it, it goes like this. But coaches and speakers, leaders, they talk about why and purpose. Why and purpose is not enough. There's actually an underlying burn, and the burn is what ignites your why and purpose every single day, that causes you to show up on the days that you don't feel like it, and especially after you win. So just to put this into context, because some people say, well, isn't that the same thing? No, my why and purpose is to empower, inspire, and educate people to uncover their passions and desires, to seek a greater vision for themselves. Believe it or not, that has been my why and my purpose statement since April of 2004, when I was getting ready to become a financial advisor. I actually wrote it in March of 2004. Wasn't even doing the work that I'm doing. But my burn is to make sure I don't waste a day, because I got those 6 extra years one day at a time that my mother never got. So without that burn, I'm skipping days. And so I think it's important that people understand why and purpose has to be clear. But once you understand that fire, you say, I'm not wasting a day. And so maybe it's little eyes that are watching you. It's a sacrifice that somebody made for you that you say, man, when I think about the sacrifice my mom and dad made for me, I can't waste this day. Yeah. Or maybe it's a sacrifice you're currently making to be an example for somebody else who's watching you. I think that burn is the difference, Ken.
I think, and from that burn, and you're talking about being, really comes fulfillment. And I tell people all the time, when you lay your head down on the pillow at the end of the day, I don't care how many zeros are in your bank account. I don't care how many commas. I don't care how successful you are in business. When you lay your head down at nighttime and you've got a level of fulfillment because of the impact and the difference you've made in other people's lives, and you're watching other people win at levels, I'm sure even for Jalen, I know you guys were close. To watch him in the Super Bowl and watch what he did this past year has got to be fulfilling for you because of the impact you were able to have in his life.
Well, Jalen's one of those kids. He didn't need much from me. You just maybe occasionally share a thing or two, but I'll tell you, he's a fine young man. I was actually blessed to be. I've done some work within the Eagles organization, so I was there with them at the Super Bowl, and I was just there about a month ago for OTAs. And I'll share something amazing about Joslin, because this is not in the book. So picture this. The young man just signs for 200. I mean, this totally embodies. We had no idea we were going to go here on this conversation. Yeah. This totally embodies what you wanted to discuss, which was this no seduction of success concept. So here you take a young man, you just went to the Super Bowl. People are saying, people told him you'll never be a quarterback. He probably should have changed this. So now he's dominating at the highest possible level. He signs a $250 million contract. His family is set for day. He's such a bright, sharp, brilliant young man. He's never going to spend that money. So here he's set for life. You just came off the Super Bowl. And I show up to OTAs. He's wearing a weight vest. He's the only guy on the team wearing a weight vest in the gym that day. And the whole team was actually lifting together. And they're still at the 90-man roster, smaller weight room in Philly. So you got 90 guys. You picture Jalen Hurts has a damn weight vest on, and he goes and he's doing reverse leg curls. So he's already doing what I call the unrequired. The unrequired are the things that other people can't see. They don't want to do. They don't want to talk about, that the highest performers choose to make a priority. So $250 million wasn't going to keep him from doing the unrequired. Making it to the Super Bowl, he's not defining himself by that. It's me giving all that I have today. I will not be seduced by success. Weight vest on, doing these reverse leg curls. And then his next exercise was kettlebell pushes in front of him. He jogs. There's not even any room to jog in this weight room, Ken. There's 90 of these guys on top of each other. It was the most unnecessary jog I've ever seen in my life. It was one of these just not even really moving, but his point was, you will watch me go as fast as I can from this point to that point to set the example. And I thought that's one of the, I mean, this wasn't, his dad's a coach. This is how he grew up. He was squatting 650 pounds before I ever even had a conversation with him. This kid just has it. But it's those examples, Ken, that those things get me fired up to say, man, like, I just want to stand here and watch this kid work because it makes me hungry to want to work more. Right? You talk about iron sharpens iron, and you just think that's no seduction of success. He didn't have to wear a weight vest. He didn't have to do this little jog, but he just continues to say, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to give it everything that I've got. He will be a world champion quarterback in the NFL one day. There is no doubt about it. That kid will not stop playing until that.
Well, and it's not only what he does on the field, but it's the example he sets.
Yes.
And the trail he blazes for all of his other teammates. Says, hey guys, this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to look like.
And are you willing to go there?
That's exactly right. Because if you're not, you're probably not going to make it.
Correct. Because you're not going to survive in that environment, because he's going to demand the same things that Saban demanded at Alabama, the same things his father demanded, which he now, and this is where I really think you find the difference. At some point in time, we as individuals have to say, I'm going to take ownership. I'm going to create my standards and take ownership. We can have leaders, we can have coaches, we can have examples, but at some point in time, you got to say, I'm going to own it. And the moment you own it and you say, look, all I want to do every day, because this is the fulfillment piece. Because to me, yes, I've been able to win championships in every level at high school, college, professional sports, help people win championships. Winning is not the trophies or the rings. Winning is your ability to look yourself in the mirror one day at a time and say, today I gave it my very best. If you can do that, put your head on the pillow, like you said. Nobody can ever take that away from you. You can't ask any more of yourself. And the byproduct of stacking those days is winning at very high levels.
I heard Tom Brady. I'm a big Michigan fan. Tom Brady was at GrowthCon with Grant this year, and I'm sitting down in the front row, and Tom's, he's there, and I'm shouting "Go Blue" at him when he comes out, And he came out, but he said something that shocked me and also shocked Grant. Because Grant thought, like, when you think of some of the top athletes and performers in the world, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant's, like, they've got this assassin-like mentality. Like, and I thought with Tom, that's exactly where winning was the number one thing. And I remember Grant asked him that question. You've won 7 Super Bowls, I think, 6, 7 Super Bowls. I mean, he's the GOAT. And it's not even close.
Ken, he's won more Super Bowls than any franchise has won Super Bowls. That's crazy that is.
Isn't that nuts? That's crazy. You've won all these Super Bowls. Was it your drive to win? And he was like, not at all. He goes, my favorite thing about winning Super Bowls was me showing up and being the best teammate I could be for my teammates. And then celebrating that knowing that we put in the work, and then celebrating with my teammates after we won a championship. That's why I did what I did. And he goes, there are days when I walked off the field where I thought, you know what? We gave it everything we had. Our team gave it we could not have put in any more effort. We just came up a little short today. I was like, I did not expect that from Tom Brady. And you just said it. Like, literally, when I put in everything that I can do, and I've squeezed every ounce of potential out of who I and who God called me to be, that's all I can give it. And I absolutely love that. You've got an event coming up live that's going to coincide with your book release the first week of August. Talk a little bit about that event and where our people can find that, Ben.
It's the Mental Toughness Forum. So it's online, it's on demand. There's 35 speakers. You have got to be in that lineup for our event next year. Some of the top speakers in the world, blessed to have his friends who are going to impact individuals, 8 to 10 minute messages, 6 to 7 of them every day. They'll hit your email. You can sign up at mentaltoughnessforum.com. So even though this is going to roll after we've started, it's on demand. You can go back, get all the videos. You can still sign up now. I mean, just our day one speakers alone, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Levante David, my dear friend, captain of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady, Ed Milet, Nick Santanastasso. I mean, this is just that's just day one.
Yeah.
And so I'd love the opportunity to spend that time with all of you. It is virtual. It is on demand. You can watch it on your time frame. But I really want to help people limit their self-talk, grab a hold of their mental toughness, develop those standards, and start winning more in their lives. And that online conference will probably end up with somewhere around 75,000 people online. It's going to have a huge impact. That's like filling a stadium. So let's all get inside that stadium and let's go win together.
I love it, man. Ben, best place for people to connect with you, my friend.
At Continued Fight on Instagram, and bennewman.net is the email.
Love it. Guys, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Ben, thank you, my friend, for being with us today. Dude, you are a champ, my friend. You are a freaking champ. Guys,
much love, brother. Iron sharpens iron. So right back at you. Thank you.
Yes, it does. Guys, thanks for joining us on another episode of As a Leader Grows, where we are passionate about helping business leaders build confidence, gain clarity, create community. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. If we've added value, take a screenshot, tag my guy Ben, tag me. We'll reshare that on Instagram. And again, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.